Hi, everyone. This is immigration attorney John Khosravi. Thank you for joining the Immigration Lawyers podcast. We're going to do a fun episode recapping all that went down in 2020. So it's a little late. It's like the third week almost of 2021. But I had the notes here, and I'm like, okay, I took a lot of time taking down notes of major things that happened during this time. So I thought I'd set it up here. But before we start, I want to really thank everyone who's been following and joining. We have so many people reaching out. Please do, if you're a listener, let me know what interests you and what you like about it and stuff. It always helps me out and keeps me motivated. Because remember, I'm a guy sitting alone in the room talking to myself out loud. So I need having this kind of back and forth really does help me out, and I appreciate it. I also want to thank my sponsor, which is DACA, a great form software system that I use. That just every day comes up with something new. I saved it right here, some recent stuff. They keep updating the software. It's great at forms, but really good at management of different office files. Now they added Outlook calendar and shareable links. They have ways you can text message your client stuff for filling out CRMs. They're wonderful. And they were kind enough to create a special system where you get a discount. So if you go to www.dacawise.com/immigration _ I can't remember. I'll have to look that up, but try both or email me and I'll send you a link. Immigration-lawyers-podcast and just use the code Immigration Lawyers Podcast. In addition to the automatic discount you get for buying an annual plan, you also get a 10% off that plan. So you save a lot of money, and that's the plan I have. So I feel comfortable with telling people that this is what I do. And I also want to thank them. They're supporting and sponsoring the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine, which is going to be coming out next week or two. That's going to be a lot of fun. We have over a dozen of our colleagues contributing articles. And, if it's a success, we're going to keep doing that, hopefully make it a repeated constantly throughout the year, updating people on training on immigration law, on what's going on in the marketing of the business, what's going on in the sales of the business, what's going on consular, every aspect of it, who's doing what, and really make it a trade magazine that, is really up to the level of what our great practice area is, especially with all the, I know we thought President Trump's time was going to be crazy with changes. Well, it's full of negative changes, but, hey, we might have some huge popular changes coming on with President Biden. So we'll see. Fingers crossed it's not going to be a mess, but be really good if good stuff happens. So with that, let's see what else guys say. This is just general immigration information, not intended for individual purposes. I won't do my regular intro. We just jump into talking about stuff I want to talk about. But one more thing, if you like this, please like and leave a review, a 5-star review, and this wherever you're listening and watching, whether on YouTube or whether on iPod or iTunes or whatever it is. It helps the show. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast, a part of the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, an education and marketing publication for the immigration law community that includes legal updates, interviews, discussions, education and CLE material, and more. Note that the information here is for general education only and not intended as individual legal advice. The laws change frequently, so you should consult with an attorney about your specific case. For more information, please visit immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Let's jump into it. What happened in 2020? I think one of the biggest issues for me was interesting on the USCIS DHS and was the fact that courts are saying that the DHS director and even USCIS director secretary of the DHS were improperly put in place because of the way the president did it. And that undoes a lot of the decisions that they made. Now, they put the emphasis on this for a lot of the asylum stuff, and they put all the asylum stuff on hold, which is groundbreaking. But they also, and especially in the Ninth Circuit, put the public charge rule on hold, which I'm not sure what's going on, if that's going to stick or not, or when that goes into effect, I think by the end of the month. But it's groundbreaking that happened, because they have to backtrack. It's not just immigration decisions this person made. There's all these other decisions they made internally and with budgets and stuff. What happens to that? It's very grand decision-making, and now they're gone. New president's coming. What's going to happen? And the waning days of President Trump's administration, it seems like they're doing some sort of trick where the guy steps down, goes in another position, and the new director of DHS is coming in and saying the decisions they made were right or something like that. They're playing some games. So that's something that's very serious. We got to keep an eye on. But what a wild ride to have the Department of Homeland Security secretary be improperly installed, which undoes a lot of their decisions, all their decisions potentially. How does that functionally play out? But that was one of the biggest pieces of news for me and last year. But obviously, probably bigger news is COVID-19 and how much of a crazy situation, a disruptive situation it's been. And with that, for immigration purposes, it's everything that happened, whether it's on the U.S. side with USCIS. We have ASC appointment centers, interviews with USCIS field offices, shut down. And now that they're slowly reopening, they have less bandwidth. They're seeing less people, which means a huge amount of delays when it comes to what's it called, getting biometrics appointments. And even now, there's huge amount of delays with getting receipts, probably because they don't have as much staff sitting next to each other, opening up these packages and doing these things. So it's a wild time. But then when we go on the foreign side, what's going on with the visas? We have different travel bans that are related to employment, family kind of cases. Parents of U.S. citizens can't come. Brothers and sisters can't come. If you're from certain countries like China, Iran, Brazil, Europe, and UK, who would have thought that we would have shut down travel to Europe? But that was a reality that happened. And then there's other things. There's other bans regarding China. They're coming here for researchers, bans there. Going back to COVID, there's the NIE, a special exemption you can request. It's a weird system that happened. There were a lot of lawsuits that pushed it back and forth. There's one K1 lawsuit, Milligan, where they said that people who are plaintiffs can force, and this is something that's not talked about, and I've been wanting to talk about it for a while. The K1 decision, the fiancé visa decision in Milligan, said that the way the judge, I think it's Judge Mehta or something like that, whoever that is, said if 212F, that's the statute they use for COVID, for travel bans, it gives the president the ability to ban someone from entering the United States, but not the ability to shut down getting visas. So for the plaintiffs in that case, he said, listen, if you're a plaintiff that's in China or has visited China last 2 years, you still can get your visa interview. You can have your visa approved, but the travel ban in particular for China says you can't have been in China for the last 2 weeks. These people can leave China, go to a third country, and wait there the 2 weeks and then fly to the United States. Whereas if they come directly from China, CBP would ban their entry and send them back. But they still can be issued a visa. And this is groundbreaking because now this judge put it only for the plaintiffs, but if you broaden it, it's not just K1 cases. These are all the travel bans that are based on 212F. It's groundbreaking precedent that they set into place. We'll see what happens with that. But essentially, they're saying the way it's worded, everyone can get the visa. It's just they can't come in. So that's a whole different ballgame. So let's see what happens with that. And then there was a lawsuit, I think the NAM lawsuit, where if you join, it was for employment-based cases. If you join certain groups or associations, you would come in within the plaintiffs of those groups and get in. It's a lot of wild stuff's happening, but the importance of litigation becomes so important. And a lot of our colleagues at Banis and interviewed you guys a couple of times, but you know the firm I'm talking about. There's litigation. We have the trio, and they're on the cover going to be of Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, issue 1 of Greg Siskin, Jeff Joseph, and Charles Cook. And then we have the diversity visa lawsuits with Curtis Morrison, I believe. I'm mixing up names. I'm so bad with names. And a lot more. We're doing these lawsuits that colleagues that are doing great. And so that's wonderful. Now, the lawsuits that have been really important too is the public charge lawsuits. The Ninth Circuit right now says they may, put injunction in their jurisdiction, not a national one. The injunction for Form DS 5540, I think it is, for the public charge through the embassy system, that's still going. President Biden seems he's going to shut these down. But who knows? Because when it comes to the public charge rule, you can imagine it's something that people who don't like immigration, or even people who are down with immigration, it kind of will make sense to them, the argument of saying, hey, we have to show that they could make enough money. Now, practically speaking, we know as immigration lawyers how awful the Form I-944 is and how annoying it is when you're abroad having to get health insurance in the United States, not having a social security number and trying to get a credit report. It just is a weird situation, the way they devised it. But hey, we'll see. Now, another travel restriction that happened is cross-border activities between Canada, Mexico to the United States, and Canada itself for going there. Land border restrictions are there. Flights are still happening, but that's something that's kind of wild between these neighbors because the interchange of the populations is so important. Now, one good and bad with the immigration updates is that the fact that premium processing is supposed to change. And as USCIS would have it, they took the worst angles of it. So they said they're increasing premium processing to include different kinds of cases like EADs, like EB1C, multinational transfers, and multinational transferees for, I don't know, large corporations, whatever that full name of it is. And that's great. But on the other end, they increased the fee pretty dramatically. and they increase the time it takes for them to make a decision. So it's no more like 2 weeks calendar days. It's like 30, business days or something like that. Something ridiculous. So they increased the fee already, and they lengthened the time a pre and processing it take. But on the other end, they didn't add those extra parts to it. So they took the worst parts of it and put into place, but not the good parts, which is really unfair. It's a lawsuitable kind of thing, in my opinion. But that's what we come to expect. Now, the BIA is making a lot of changes to personnel. As you imagine, a lot of good people have left there or been paid out. New people are coming in. Oof, it's bad. And one thing that's popping up too, a new chief judge is there too, is in the EOIR manual, they're making little updates constantly and not really telling us what it is. I don't do court stuff, but they're posting people that like, you have like a 30-day appeal time. They shorten it to 15 days without anyone really knowing. So that was a wild situation. Now it seems like nonstop, this train of horror, but USCIS almost went bankrupt, essentially went bankrupt in September, even though they make so much money, even though they have all these filing fees after 4 years of President Trump, increasing, fraud investigations, taking that money and putting it into other areas that are not appropriate and just draining them of resources. They were about to go officially bankrupt before they got a bailout. But reality is if they're underfunded, that's what has to do with slowdowns. And clients constantly ask, how long is my case going to take? And I keep saying, like, what do you think with COVID-19, where people are short-staffed and you might have an interview, the officer is going to do the interview that morning, gets sick. And so all of a sudden they're one person down. Add to that less money for overtime, less money for even basic stuff. That's just a recipe for disaster. Now CBP, a sister organization of USCIS under the Department of Homeland Security, has been doing some stuff too that I don't think is appropriate in 2020. One is they're flying predator drones to do reconnaissances in the US, which is very troublesome. When the Portland riots were happening, the federal police officers that are going there many times were CBP officers taken from border points. CBP is the biggest police force of the federal government, and taken to pick up protesters in the streets. Now, I don't like what happened with these rioters in Portland. That was kind of crazy what they're doing. I'm not a fan of that. But you got to be careful when you have federal police come in and stuff like that. I'm not a fan of that at all. And they've also been using license plate technology readers. And then one messed up thing is they're putting ban on a global entry without much. You don't get due process on it, at least with something to give you an idea. And they're using cell phone location data. ICE too. They're using like cell phone location targeting kind of stuff. They practice this stuff on the least able to defend themselves. All this police state kind of stuff. And once they master the technology, have it, it's going to come for all of us. And that's why if you're an immigration attorney, whether you're pro-immigrant, anti-immigrant, if you hate immigrants, if none of them come to the United States, this is still an issue. You shouldn't be pro this stuff, because this is going to come after you and your children one day pretty soon. Now, one thing that's happening with the riots that happened in Hong Kong, we don't hear about it anymore because of what happened COVID, and people can't really go out in groups. But President Trump was making it, was it the riots or something that happened where essentially it said Hong Kong may be considered part of mainland China, which would mess around with the special situation Hong Kong has, where they're not considered part of mainland China for the visa bulletin purposes, for the numbers when it comes to visa distribution, and a lot of other stuff when it regards to people coming from Hong Kong. For example, the travel ban from China because of COVID, what people from Hong Kong be able to come. There was a CBP notice that said Hong Kong's not included. At first, it looked like it, then it's not. So it still hasn't fully shifted, even though some policy decisions of how they treat Hong Kong have shifted. But that could change any day. So you have clients from Hong Kong, reach out and follow up this stuff to make sure they're not subject to any bans of any sort or any special restrictions. Now, the EOIR, the courts did some weird stuff too. I have 17 pages of notes. How do I have 17 pages of notes? Oh, I didn't fully organize my notes. There's large articles here I just copy pasted, but I'll just read the headlines and get back to it. But EOIR, that's the Executive Office for Immigration Review, the courts. TRAC, which is a system by, what is it? It's like an offshoot of the University of somewhere in Pennsylvania, I think. I did an interview with one of their founders, and they said the asylum data should not be relied upon. It's fishy. The EOIR director responded, said, you know what, that's wrong. It's inappropriate for you to say that. So we'll see. This TRAC is saying says you don't trust the data that's coming out of there. That's a troubling thing to hear. And then DOJ, Department of Justice, reassigned career members of Board of Immigration Appeals. Okay, I just have that headline. Don't have more on that. Next is asylum challenges and changes, proposed rulemaking. So they're trying to shift asylum dramatically, but essentially the courts have shut that down. So that's all on hold. But who knows? I think the EADs got to wait a year to get them now. It's just a weird situation. One thing, I was supposed to have a consult interview for the podcast with the gentleman that opened my eyes to this. Now they're requiring the translator to be a USCIS designated third-party company that they have for translators, because they don't want to have extra people in the office when they're doing the asylum interviews, because for COVID reasons, for transmission of disease and all that. However, I have a colleague that's an attorney who also speaks a foreign language, and he's been traveling across the country to go to interviews with people that are from his home country because he speaks their language. And what he's finding is inconsistent translation services. So in some states he's going in, he's had it where in one interview, they changed 3 different translators until they got the right one who was properly translating. And so that's really dangerous when your translator is making a mistake on something so important like asylum. That is as mind-boggling. So if you have these kind of cases, unfortunately, how are you going to appeal it? You don't have the evidence on record, but that's something to be careful of, and maybe have a person, if you're having a client who doesn't speak the language and you don't speak their language too, to be able to catch stuff with a translator making a mistake, definitely send them in with a lawyer that does. It's just safer for the client. And then a judge says DHS director illegal. So, okay, so stop certain stuff. We talked about that. Now, DACA, that was a big thing. Supreme Court punted essentially. They have this non-decision where they said, Trump administration didn't properly take DACA away, but they can take it away. They just didn't do the paperwork right, whatever that means. And so we went back to the drawing board. And then another judge in California said, fully DACA open. A judge in Texas, federal judge, is saying, no, maybe it's going back. Right now, you can file for DACA. I'm really interested to see how people are doing and filing for advanced parole. I went back and started emailing, calling DACA clients that had to say, listen, get that advanced parole, please get it. And they're not in a rush. They don't understand the rush to get this. So hopefully that works. And they're giving 2-year DACA now instead of 1 year. And probably Biden's going to continue DACA as part of his administration as vice president. I don't see that happening. And there's been several lawsuits where big companies were discriminating against DACA people, DACA recipients, and there's massive, settlements that come from that. So we'll see. Now, I-9 verification, this is when you want to file, get a job, and you need to prove that you're actually a U.S. person or a U.S. Someone who could work in the United States. Luckily, they have said there's I-9 flexibility, so you don't have to show originals, because a lot of people can't go to work right now to show an original document that has to be reviewed by the human resources, whoever it is at the company. They are allowing flexibility. And also, because people are not getting their work permits, and they're getting, it's just massive delays where work permits are getting approved, you're getting a notice of approval, but you're not getting the actual work permit in the mail. They're saying, and they've extended it again they'll probably re-extend it, but you can show the receipt paper, and that should be enough. And so that's a great situation. Now, H1B was an area of just massive lawsuits in every aspect of it. They're trying to push up the wage levels for that. So that's been pushed back and forth, and Department of Labor is getting involved. They're cracking down, doing search inspections. So H1B is a massive area that has had problems and just changes. And also a lottery system. We had a second round cap lottery. It was the first year we're doing this new lottery system that President Trump put into place. And now they put the 60-day rule that they're going to say, 60 days rule promulgation for regulation, that this time they're going to base a lottery on who has the highest wage rate and then move down. So it's a different format. I haven't read the rules, but that's going to be a huge change. And so we'll see. Now, student visas were another part that were really messed up, where all of a sudden ICE said that, yeah, if you have online courses, you have to leave. You can't do your student visa here. There are so many lawsuits and pushback that they undid that and said, if you're physically going to school in March 2020, then you can continue going. But if you're a new student, for example, getting a student visa, and you are going to take only an online course, you can't come here. There's probably some more nuance to that. But that was interesting to see the pushback from a lot of universities. I mean, they really are killing universities by shutting down the F1 student visa program. The statistics are massive drops going on. And that really affects, the finances of these universities. So I don't understand what they're thinking. If they want the schools to go broke, they're doing a great thing. Just like if they want USCIS to go broke, they did it well too. So that's just the things in this administration that we're dealing with. And then their animosity even goes out to the immigration judges. They're working on. They have already maybe decertified the immigration judges union. There was a lot of pushbacks. A lot of judges are leaving. But they're putting pressure on how many court cases they can see, how quickly they see it, what they can and can't do, trying to shut it down. So, you can't get master hearing, coming back from master hearing, we don't have a lawyer, for example. They're making it hella difficult for them, and so that's something that's happening. And then the Remain in Mexico policy with COVID and all that kind of stuff, that's going on too. I don't keep track of it too closely, but that's still there. And I'm here right now, new caravans coming from Honduras, so we'll see what happens. Now, TPS is interesting. There's lawsuits. There's an automatic extension that happened for a lot of these TPS cases from many countries, so that people got an extra year of work permit and TPS without renewing. The big thing is what's going to happen with their recognition of TPS as admission. So like we have 2 or 3 circuits that say TPS is admission, and then you could adjust status based on that. Even if and then some say no, it's not. And if you get TPS at advanced parole, you revert back to the original status you had before you left, before TPS, which could be out of status. And so this mix, and the Supreme Court finally said a week or two ago that we're going to review this case. And although I'm afraid they're going to go towards the negative end, we can't have such a massive split going on in the circuits. But I was talking to Kevin Gregg, our colleague, which every month we have discussion about federal law. I was emailing him and said, be careful what you wish for. I've been talking about this frequently, my annoyance of this inconsistency in the law, but hopefully they make a good decision, doesn't come out wrong, and it helps these people on TPS. Because TPS is temporary protected status. It is status. They should be able to adjust status, but it's wild that it has such different aspects. So I'm going to go through some M&A stuff, mergers and acquisitions, and immigration space, and just go through some really random notes I took over here. So we jump around a lot, but immigration tech saw some big changes in 2020, and our colleague Roman Zelechenko did a great article breaking each one of them down. But we have Mitra Tech, which is this one tech company that purchased Tracker Corp, an offshoot of Pearl Law Group, I believe it was, that helps organize large volume kind of immigration cases. And they also bought Ines Zoom. So this is groundbreaking. Mitra Tech coming in the immigration sector, making huge moves. Boundless, which helps people prepare their forms, acquired by Rapid Visa. What is going to happen there? Simple Citizen was purchased by Fragment. Simple Citizen helped people do some immigration stuff and some back-end computer stuff to update Fragment's internal system so they can handle large volumes internationally. Corporate immigration partners, formerly Pro Law Group, partnered up with Envoy Global, announcing an official affiliation. So that's something that's there. So that's that with tech, but there's going to be changes happening this year, but it's going to affect you because these are the form softwares you use, these are the internal systems you use, and these are competitors. They're getting, the rich are getting richer, and powerful are getting more powerful. Now, one issue I skipped over when we're talking about asylum is this blasted issue about if you have gaps in the I-589 and in U visas as well, there's missing spaces. You don't write NA, not applicable, or none where appropriate. They'll reject the case and come back. There was a lawsuit. There was a settlement. They're not going to do that, at least for the time being. But that really caused a scare, and it got me into the habit of just putting that on all my applications, whether I-130s, I-485s, just fill in every box. And then I thought, you know what? I'd rather have NA in there in case an officer goes and writes something and just says, oh, that was there, Now, one issue is when you write not applicable, if you make a mistake and it was applicable, I don't want them to come back and say it's fraud, but hopefully it's just an honest mistake. So you got to be cautious of what you're saying NA or none to, but that's something up there. Now, kind of going back to the changes in technology and the big getting bigger, Arizona opened up their bar to non-attorneys. So you could partner up with a non-attorney. So this is groundbreaking because our immigration practice is federal. So what happens if this big marketing company partners up with a law firm and does immigration law? They could then market nationally. That's going to be hugely competitive. A lot of money going into this space. So be prepared for some wild stuff going on. Now, switching subjects really quickly and be prepared for that. There's been I-730 crackdowns. These are cases where relatives of asylees requesting applications to be able to come here and live here. And USCIS has been taking longer and longer on these and doing a lot of crackdowns, requiring interviews and trying to find reasons to deny them for fraud, misrepresentation. So be prepared. These are not easy open and shut cases anymore. There's a huge problem. Now, one thing I missed, this was a big story, we had us all stressed out, is the fee increase that was stopped. They're about to dramatically raise the fees. There was an injunction. It's that injunction is going to hold. But in one sense, maybe they should increase the fees if they don't have money. Hopefully they'll have a better system so they're not blowing through so much money at USCIS, but it seems they may need to increase fees because they do increase them slowly. So some more money to get things up running is not too bad. It's just when you see citizenship double up and get so expensive, that's disheartening. And along with that, I remember the fee increase was happening at the same time the visa bulletin jumped in September, especially for employment-based cases. All of a sudden there was this wild rush to filing. And that I think that's one of the reasons why this huge end of year delays are happening, where all of a sudden these thousands and thousands of Indian EB2s and 3s were filed at once. It was a crazy situation. Now they have filed notice to the government that they're trying to get out of the B1 in lieu of H visa. I never done one of those, but for certain countries like Japan and Germany, which have big, factory bases, industrial bases, it's used a lot. So if it's there, why take it out? Let people use it. But that's never something I handle. The other thing that's really massive, you all probably get emails and calls about this every day, is when are the embassy opening up? When are they're shut down, this and that. They open and then they close. They schedule appointments and they unschedule. Some countries are fully processing, some are not. There's no consistency. Now jump into citizenship. They've changed the civics test. They're double up how many questions they're going to ask and how many you have to answer. And so that's a big change. But overall, I mean, people have to memorize it. There's some additional questions out to test on. So if you're going to send the practice questions to your clients for filings after December, make sure it's not the 100-question test. It's, I think, 116 or whatever the new changes are. So that's there. And I have so government bears burden on bonds. So, okay, so there was a switch up. I think it was one federal court said this, that in a bond hearing, the burden is on the government to prove because they're taking away someone's freedom. They have to do that. That was a wonderful decision that was made. I don't have more information on that here, but I did an interview with Kevin Gregg for our monthly talking about federal court cases, and we really broke this one down, or he did. I was just adding my commentary. So check that out. I think it was the last one or the one before, monthly federal court update. So let's see, BIA, we have matter of Ortega 28 INN. It says an alien who has conspired to enter into marriage for the purpose of evading the immigration laws by seeking to secure a K1 fiance non-honorary visa is subject to the bar under 204C. So, K1 fraud is going to be 204C fraud. 204C is when you do marriage fraud, and that holds, stays against you. They added for sure K1, so that's something to be prepared for. And something to be prepared for is if you have a marriage case that's doing now, and the person was married before at any time in any way, be careful, especially if they try to get status or applied and it wasn't approved or applied, they withdrew. They're going to look deeply into the previous relationship. So those are not open and shut cases. You want to document the previous marriage and tell the client to be prepared for pushback or delays because of that. I think that's one of the most important things to tell you when it comes to marriage immigration cases in the future. Now, USCIS shutdown regulation update notification. So they used to update us when they were going to do Federal Register stuff, but now you have to go and register the Federal Register so you get email notifications of these updates when they're going to update federal regulations. So be prepared for that. There's also massive visa reciprocity chart updates. This is very interesting because they're looking and saying, the U.S. gives visas to certain people at certain costs and for certain times. So, for example, you get an E2, you could be here, you get an E2 visa for 5 years. But Trump went back and said, hey, look, like in Australia, we're charging $0 for someone to get an e-visa, but if we're getting the equivalent to go to Australia, they're charging $2,500 or whatever amount. We're going to do the same. And he went country by country, and dozens of countries had their visa reciprocity charts change, where the cost change and increase many times, the multiple or single aspect of the visa change, and the length of time the visa has. So if you're going to do a visa, you've always been doing, you did a lot, 2019, didn't do it for 2020. Before you have your consultation, for example, on the E2 for a client from a certain country, go and check. Excuse me, I'm yelling for so much time. Go and check the visa reciprocity chart. Just type in visa reciprocity in Google and check the chart for that country and see how much their visa fees are. Because those are in addition to the IV immigrant visa, non-immigrant visa fee, 260, 230, whatever it is for that country, 165, whatever kind of visa category, because those will be different. So you don't want to send your client down the wrong direction, or have them all of a sudden be surprised that these changes have happened. Now, another thing is to really check. There's been they're changing with filing locations for different lock boxes for different types of cases. They've shut down direct filing with most embassies and USCIS international offices. So that's a huge shift that happened as well. Now, another thing that happened is judge says ICE official lied to court and obstructed the case in a case for immigration facility in Bakersfield, California. That's crazy. The judge said he gave false testimony several times to the court. Is there anything going to be done? I hope so. But that's nuts that would go on record and judges recognizing a crime occurred, giving false testimony in court. Hopefully people will be held responsible for that. You can't have people lying. That's ridiculous. All right, so what else going on? A lot of lawsuits against ICE and their Dragnet searches for people. Not down with that. Expanding the interviews for refugees asylum cases, which are usually just approved without an interview. That was a big one. Department of Justice is proposing to define good cause, quote unquote, in the context of continuances, adjournments, and postponements. So that's a big shift that is happening. And another thing is with the immigration court, there are massive hiring that happen, but many of them don't have any immigration law experience. And so, as you know, if you're listening to this, all the things I talked about, it's taken me 10 or 12 years right now, however long I've been practicing, for me to be able to talk this comfortably about immigration law. And I talk about like 50 different topics right now. And parts of them I just skip through. I said, listen, I don't do asylum cases. I don't remember. I don't keep track of all of them. How is an immigration, as a lawyer, all of a sudden going to become an immigration judge, know what's going on? Now, I've had colleagues who have said, hey, we have some judges who had no background in immigration, but they came out to be great judges. So, you can't just make a wide swath and say everyone's the same, but it is kind of troubling because immigration is so complicated. Here, Executive Office of Immigration Review announces investiture of 20 new immigration judges, resulting in a 70% expansion of the immigration judge corps since 2017. So that's huge. That's a huge jump. Okay, so U.S. colleges report a 43% decline in new international student enrollment. That's wild. Collection of biometric data from aliens upon entry and departure. So increasing biometrics. They've been, after 9/11, they said when you're leaving too, you have to do biometrics. They're adding that. They're getting into it to check people when they're leaving. So that's a huge shift that's happening. And something that administration tried to do, I'm not sure it's going to happen now, is for affidavit to support IA-64, the sponsor and joint sponsors would then supposed to give biometrics data as well, and get background checks and give bank statements and not background checks, what's it called? Fingerprints. It was wild what they want to do. So luckily, I think that's going to get stopped. Now, one thing that happened for Iranians after in January was all of a sudden there was a crackdown where even U.S. citizens of Iranian descent that are coming in Washington State from the border in Canada, we just went for fun, we're coming back. They're not allowed in, or they're being held for a day or two, or not allowed into the United States. Wild, crazy issue. And CBP at first said, oh no, just one-off kind of mistake kind of thing. But now they say emails show CBP detained hundreds of Iranians for hours pursuant to an unlawful directive. Heads should be rolling for that. That's illegal. That's against U.S. citizens. Unfortunately, our news is so caught up on talking about Trump that they forget like factual stuff, because Trump's going to go, but the people that did this are career people. We got to figure out what happened now that happened again. The new bars. So they try to push these asylum bars. I think that's on hold. But so they said if asylum person is filing for asylum, they can't get it for certain things like under federal law, alien smuggling, illegal reentry. But one thing that was really messed up is certain misdemeanors under federal law or state law, offenses related to false identification, the unlawful receipt of public benefits, possession of traffic stolen supplements, asylums who have committed certain domestic violence offenses, even if not convicted, will also be barred from asylum. I think there was one on DUIs here too, or something like that. But that's wild. So if you're not convicted, or someone makes an accusation, they'll be held against you. Okay, so what else is going on? Updating policy manual. So this is really messed up on the USCIS update of the policy manual for naturalization. And I read it once. They said I think they changed the language, so it's harder to find. But Cyrus Mehta's blog, he talks about this. So I'm like, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one who noticed this. But they're saying when you're filing for citizenship and they have the 3 or 5 year look back to see if you were in the U.S. enough, or you were outside too much, or all these kind of issues. With regards to whether you abandon status, they'll look back to the time of the initial green card granting, which could be 10, 15, 20, 30, whatever years back. And if there's time there that you potentially abandoned it, we're outside for more than 1 year, it can not only cause the denial of the naturalization case, but will lead to an NTA to appear in court to defend yourself for abandonment of lawful permanent resident status. This is wild. This is crazy. Hopefully this specific policy, which has always kind of been in place, but the practical thing was if CBP lets you in, they would just let it go. They specifically say, no, even if CBP lets you in, it's not up to them. In naturalization, USCIS officer will deny and send you with an NTA to go to immigration court. So be careful. Go when you have naturalization cases. It's not open and shut. Go through the whole history. I had a consultation with a person. They were outside for 3 years once and came back. 20 years goes by. They want to file now, and I say, hey, listen, you were out 3 years. And it's interesting because they were out 3 years. 2 years later, they filed for citizenship. Was denied for the long absence, but nothing happened because the policy practically was that they don't do anything about that. But now, that's the difference. So I say, hey, listen, wait to see what happens, because I would not want to file your case and have you get an NTA. Not worth the hassle. Just prepare for that. Then they say for adjustment of status, the applicant has the burden of demonstrating eligibility, including favorable exercise of discretion is warranted. So they kind of switch it up to make it sound like adjustment of status is going to get more difficult. Let me make a quick note to myself. I got to do something regarding that exact thing for a client. Okay, so despite the partial court shutdown during COVID-19 pandemic, this year immigration judge managed to decide the second highest number of asylum decisions in the last 2 decades. The rate of denial continued to climb to a record high of 71.6%, up from 54.6% during the last year of President Obama's administration. So that's crazy. And then ICE reached a deal with Vermont-based immigration activists Wednesday, ending 2 years of litigation over claims that the agency targeted them for surveillance and deportation. Oof. What are they doing? Customs and Border Protection is using commercially available location data from cell phones to conduct warrantless trafficking of people inside the U.S. and refused to provide lawmakers with a legal justification for these activities, according to 5 senators. What? What's going on? A California judge ruled that President Trump, and these are all 2020 headlines, a California judge ruled that President Trump likely overstepped his authority when he blocked new work visas on coronavirus. Yeah. DHS proposed rules to strengthen affidavit support. We talked about that earlier, and about DHS, people are leaving. They want to add, when it comes to the biometrics I was talking about for sponsors, they want to add eye scans, voice, and facial recognition for an I-864 sponsor. Are you crazy? This is they're trying to blow through money. And that's wild. Why do you need a voice recognition system for a joint sponsor? I mean, this is crazy. I think they want to get people, citizens, used to the fact that everything of them is digitized, put in the system for tracking. A very troublesome affair. Very, very troublesome. It's something we got to sue and push back on if it sounds like it's actually going to happen. Okay, you get worked up reading this kind of stuff. So DOJ proposes to amend the regulations for EOIR regarding handling of appeals to the Board of Immigration. Department proposes multiple changes to ensure consistency. They're just trying to make it harder and easier for the BIA to shut things down. So that's happening. Ninth Circuit of Court of Appeals affirms summary judgment denies qualified immunity to Montana Sheriff's deputy and judge who arrested immigrant. Thank God. In a blow to government transparency, the Trump administration has decided to designate ICE a security/sensitivity agency. The move further shields ICE from public accountability, allowing them to withhold even more information. According to a leaked government memo, the Trump administration granted ICE's request to be designated a security/sensitive agency when it comes to the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. The designation limits the public's ability to obtain vital information from ICE. So that's horrible. Let's see. ICE offers Citizens Academy course with training on arresting immigrants. Huh? I don't know. In a win for the DHS, the Supreme Court said Thursday, this is 2020, that a Sri Lankan farmer who lost his bid for asylum in the U.S. after immigration officials ordered his removal could not challenge that decision in federal court. The ruling will keep courthouse doors closed to asylum seekers and expedite removal processes who say they cannot return to home country because they have a credible fear of torture and death. So I think they first said that you still get a chance to go to court, then they pulled that back. All right, so the next one we did, Supreme Court turns aside. Justice Department won't hear California Century City case. The state law in question bars police from notifying the feds when immigrants are being released after serving time for local crimes. USCBP has pushed back more than 41,000 people at the southern border. This is June 2020, since enacting a rule allowing agents to swiftly return away migrants. So that was just in June 2020. And then USCBP violated the law by taking certain funds designated by Congress for consumables and medical care for migrants and instead used some of the money for canine program, dirt bikes, and upgrades to its computer system. The Justice Department in June, the Justice Department agency that oversees U.S. immigration court systems underestimated its interpreter fee by millions when requesting correctional funding and cut resources based on miscalculated figures, a government watchdog found Tuesday. Oh, and miscalculated translators. I mean, it's just wild what happened in the last 4 years. You know, as much as I love immigration and all my life and career plans are revolve around immigration between a podcast, a magazine, my life and everything, and my wife was an immigrant. If 4 more years of this happen, it's going to be very hard to continue going. But on the other end, so many people, I teach in law school and stuff, like we're so interested in becoming immigration lawyers, but it's just so nasty, that thing that was happening the last 4 years. June 1st, foreigners with criminal conviction who fear they will be tortured if they are deported can't challenge denials of their request to stay in the U.S. I think this goes back and forth, this issue of for cancellation, I guess. There was this executive summary by U Visas that was put out, and I'll just read some headlines. From fiscal year 2012 to 2018, persons born in Mexico comprised the majority of principal petitioners for U visas. The share of female principal petitioners had decreased over time. Nearly half, 43% of petitioners filed for a derivative. USCIS estimates about 13% of principal petitioners and 8% of derivatives were in removal proceedings at the time of filing. The majority of principal petitioners reported they did not have a lawful immigration status at the time of filing. Because I imagine you don't really want to report U visa a lot of times, these kind of communities, if you have status. The most common ground of inadmissibility USCIS waived while adjudicating principal petitions for U visa non-immigrant status was present without admission or parole, 79%. Nearly 20% of petitioners required a waiver for lacking a valid passport or visa. Interesting. 80% of principal petitioners include an application requesting USCIS waive applicable admissibility grounds as initial evidence as instructed. Nearly 10% of approved petitioners required a waiver for fraud or willful misrepresentation. Okay, CBP to assess collection of DNA samples. On January 6th, CBP will initiate a limited small-scale pilot program to assess the operational impact of proposed regulatory changes that would require the collection of DNA samples from certain individuals in CBP custody. Whew, why? So that's that. During the pilot 90-day pilot program, we'll collect DNA samples of certain individuals held at both locations. In Texas, took place in Texas. This will include individuals between 14 and 79 apprehended within the Detroit sector. I guess Texas and Detroit. Oh yeah, Detroit and Texas. So that's something that's happening. Zuniga v. Barr. The panel granted Zuniga's petition review of immigration judges affirming asylum officers' negative visibility, saying right to counsel if you're. So we'll see what that pushback Zuniga case. I talked about that more in depth. I don't want to go into that too much right now. Baez v. Sanchez or Sanchez v. Barr. Citizen Mex was removable. His conviction for aggravated battery of a police officer renders him admissible. He applied for U visa, which is available to some aliens who have the qualifying, having victims, blah, blah. What was the decision? So, Seventh Court vacated, say had never been encountered defiance of demand orders. I think, oh, this is crazy. This is crazy. So Baez Sanchez v. Barr says the IJ, they remanded from the circuit court saying this is how you're supposed to do it. And the BIA remanded with instructions to consider additional issues. The IJ did so and reaffirmed. The BIA then concluded that the power to waive inadmissibility belongs to the Attorney General alone and may not be exercised by immigration judges. The Seventh Circuit held that 8 CFR 1003.10a permits IJs to exercise all of the Attorney General's powers except those expressly reserved by some other regulation. The BIA concluded that the court's decision was incorrect and did not consider the issue and remanded it. In the Seventh Court, it said it had never before encountered defiance of a remand order. It's just crazy. They even said, I remember reading something that said, did they even go to law school? What are they thinking at the BIA doing that? So it's very troublesome. There's more of this. I might skip through it because like I'm having like terror flashbacks the last of 2020. I'm going to skip some of the we're getting towards the ends of it. So I want to leave on a high note. National Visa Center no longer accepts or responds to inquiries through mail, all through the website. It's just all negative news. Come on, misuse Social Security number. Okay, one there was a matter MEA that said BI misuse of a Social Security number under 42 USC 408A78 is not a crime of immoral turpitude. A crime of immoral turpitude, is that what it's called? CIMT, because minimum conduct includes a fictitious Social Security number to get a job and serve one's family. So I thought maybe I'll help you out. Refers to that. I'm not sure how it applies to every case. But that was a quick recap of 2020. Usually I have a colleague that sits with me. I would like to have Nicholas Morales or someone go through this, but I want to go through it fast and get it out. Just to recap what we've been through. So, it's all up from here, right? If we get 11 million amnesty program, what's going to happen? Are we all going to get rich or what? We'll see what the reality of that's going to be, how that's going to work out. But that's to keep things busy. And so get your marketing in order, get your staff in order. We thought this was going to happen in Obama's time. So many people up their office or DAPA and thinking DACA is going to be path to the student card. So that didn't happen. I don't have personally much faith in politicians, so I don't see anything worthwhile happening. But I would be very happy to be surprised and see something rational happening. But a lot of immigrants get screwed hiring people that don't know what they're doing too, or just people off the street that say they do. Accountants getting involved in immigration, whatever. But 11 million people. There's 20,000 immigration lawyers, probably 20,000 new ones pop up. But hey, that's great. Listen to my podcast. I always learn something and get better at what you do. One thing I forgot to plug at the beginning is I have the Champions for Freedom course on marriage immigration cases. Definitely contact me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com to get information about that 12-hour course. material breaking down how I do a case, how to fill out the forms from beginning to end, sample of my contract, sample of how to talk to clients. All this kind of stuff is in there. Strongly recommended by myself for you to buy my course, because it's going to help you out and let you know what you do. We have people that are law students coming in, getting that, people that are switching to immigration law, who have been practicing immigration law, doing business stuff, and people who do family immigration want to see how I do it to get that different angle of it. And so they have the kind of practice I do. We're just sitting, do podcasts, launch magazines, and I make a lot of money. So that's a good way to live. I guess with that, everyone, God bless, be safe, and I'll see you all soon. I have another interview I'm going to publish right after this as well. So I hope you catch that. Until next one, have a good one. God bless. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. The Immigration Lawyers Podcast is a part of the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, a training and marketing program for immigration lawyers. For more information about that, please email us at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Also, you can find more information and updates on the LinkedIn page for the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, as well as a private Facebook group for practicing immigration lawyers. You can email me for information about that as well. And also the Twitter page is a great place for updates. Until next one, have a good one.